What's up, everybody? This is Mark Clements from Educators.com, where we help teachers eliminate obstacles and focus on learning in their classrooms. Today, I want to talk a little bit about assessment and, in particular, the practice of giving students zeros on the 100-point scale. Now, if you use a variation of standards-based grading, either a 4 or a 5-point scale, much of this may not be really meaningful to you. I'm talking about primarily the use of zero in a traditional gradebook, based on letter grades and percentages. Giving students a score of 0 in this type of gradebook is what I and other educators often like to refer to as the Super F. Suppose for a moment that in your current unit of study, you have 5 grades. Of course, it's highly unlikely that a student would score the exact same grade on all assessments, but for the sake of the math, let's assume that the student scored a perfect 100% on 4 assessments, but for some unfathomable reason, neglected to turn in that 5th assignment, highlighted in red in our fictional gradebook. This would mean that the student would have an overall score on the unit of an 80%, as we said in most places, a B or a B-, highlighted in yellow. There are several problems with this scenario. The first being that we're assigning a student a grade for this unit, or this course, or this term, that doesn't accurately reflect their learning or their knowledge of the subject. Each letter grade almost always carries with it some sort of connotation, whether we intend for it to or not. This is the world where C means average, and B means above average, or A means something beyond that, like excels or exceeds expectations. These are phantom equivalencies. They're so subjective you really can't prove them, but they're there. The problem is that in this example, the student has never once done B caliber work. They've either been over the top, knock it out of the park, amazing, or they've completely neglected the assignment altogether, yet we report them as being a B student. Of course, irresponsibility and immaturity could be the root cause of the missing work, and of course, we should model these things, perhaps even teach lessons about them, or even rate a student's performance in these areas and report it separately in a separate section on the report card from academic grades. But it's a mistake to assume that using the Super F to punish would be any more effective in changing their behavior. It just distorts our understanding of their academic capabilities. In a perhaps more realistic example, suppose one of our A students scored a 95% on 4 assessments, but again received a 0 on the 5th, either because he or she forgot it or for some other reason received a 0. In this case, the student would receive an overall grade of 76%, a mark of C in most places, often translating to be average, when that's certainly been nothing average about the student's work. The Super F is even more harmful to our struggling learners, or intentional non-learners, often the group that we're trying so hard to reach. A student with 4 assignments earning a 70% with just 1 0 would receive a 56% or F, though clearly they're not completely failing. That same student would have to score the same 70% on 149 assignments out of 150 before their overall grade would even round up to a 70% to compensate for that one Super F. Obviously, most students aren't going to consistently score the exact same grade. There'd be a mix of B's and C's and probably quite a bit else, but this is just meant to show that the ridiculous power of 1 0 on the 100-point scale can have on a student's final grade, skewing it downward and away from their actual academic performance. Now, you may be saying that the easy solution for this is to allow students to make up or redo assignments they've received zeros for. This certainly helps, but the likelihood that a struggling learner, the ones we're trying so hard to reach, would only receive 1 Super F is not very high. More than likely, they're going to have more than 1. Suppose in a typical 9-week quarter, with 2 assignments per week, if the student were to score in that DC range on 14 assignments, with 4 zeros, that student would certainly have a failing grade. Even if they were granted makeups for full credit, something not all teachers allow, they would still struggle to pass the class if their performance was consistent with what they'd been previously. Making up all 4 assignments would then be highly unlikely, since whatever factors caused them to not complete the assignments in the first place would certainly still exist. And it's a mistake to assume that all missing assignments are the result of pure irresponsibility. After all, God forbid that the students had responsibilities that prevented them from completing their schoolwork. Maybe they had church or an extracurricular event. Maybe their grandma is sick. Maybe their family needed them. Maybe their parents are working late and they have to take care of brother and sister, or worse, maybe they're the most responsible one in their household and they have to go home early to take care of younger brothers and sisters. So instead of just allowing redos for full credit, which we absolutely should do, and that's a separate video, I implore you, dear colleagues, to do whatever I and other teachers around the world are doing when forced to assign letter grades on the 100-point scale. Instead of entering a grade as 0 in the gradebook, set 50% as the floor of your gradebook and record all missing or failed assignments as that. Additionally, treat chronic missed assignments as what they are, a behavioral or a maturity problem that should be communicated with the appropriate people, i.e. parents, and have appropriate interventions and consequences. We could spend hours debating the purpose of grades or the ethical implications of them being used to label or sort kids, but the truth is that if you're working in a school where you're assigning traditional grades like this, then fairly or unfairly, grades are most certainly being used in these ways. If you want to fight the power, change the grading structure where you are, lead a culture of learning revolution in your community that results in standards-based grading, or even if you want to go a different direction and fight for the elimination of grading altogether, more power to you. We'll be happy to talk to you about that. But those are ideas that we can discuss another day. In the meantime, if you're stuck in traditional grading models, shouldn't we take a few steps to ensure that the grade or the label that we're assigning our kids is as accurate a reflection of the student's learning as possible? Consider a couple less radical changes that will greatly impact your students' learning. Allow redos for full credit, and please eliminate the super F by only reporting F assignments as 50%, not 0% on the 100-point scale. That will do it for today's video. Thank you for watching. To eliminate more obstacles of learning and ensure that in your classroom, not learning is not an option, check us out at eduinators.com, at facebook.com/eduinators, or continue the conversation. You can email me at markclements@eduinators.com, or hit me up on Twitter at markclementsedu, or by using hashtag eduinators. Don't forget to subscribe, and we will see you next time.